I started
Okay.
recording.
Okay, good. So we can. Okay, Bismillah, guys. So now I'll be starting whatsoever you have posted here. I have, I received what was forwarded to me on the basis of the review which was done by Atas and his friends. So the question you have sent, I have put all of them, and I have gathered around 20-25 questions. And if time allows further, we can look for other things as well. So now the first question which was asked, that what are the arteries and nerves we need to know? Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and answer is the same. You need to know. I cannot say, because this College of Medicine, we don't have that practice. Do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. You've been expected to do all the arteries. Now we have to be very clear. What part of the artery? You should be knowing from where it's coming, where it's ending, and what branches is giving on the way to supply. We are not asking this artery supply which muscle, that, this and that. We are not going in details. So this is about the arteries. Veins, we are just taking a broad picture. People were thinking, oh, veins are not important. No, they are important. But we are just taking a broad picture that these are the superficial veins, these are the deep veins, and they are interconnected. And ultimately, they are draining the whole upper limb. And you have been exposed about with the names of cephalic, basalic, and then they ultimately become axillary. Now coming to the nerves. Nerves is one of the very, very integral part, and I will not recommend leave any of them. You are expected to be very good with the names of the nerves, their areas of distribution, their branches, both muscular branches as well as cutaneous branches. You are expected to be good with both of the concepts. And the main nerves. So what are the main nerves? Let me begin from the first part. So the main nerves are axillary nerve, musculocutaneous nerve, ulnar nerve, radial nerve. So these are the main nerves. Further, anterior interosseous nerve, posterior interosseous nerve. So these are the main nerves. For them, you should be knowing their root values. What is root value? C5, C6, C7, something like that is written in a small bracket. That you need to be good at it. And remember, these nerves, they were derived from a plexus. So now, on the basis of that plexus, we have so many overlaps that we need to understand. And remember, nerves are really important in a way that if you don't know the nerve, you cannot control any action. You cannot look for, you cannot help your patient. So understanding nerve is really, really, really important. And we have to spend time in understanding the nerves. I hope I'm clear about this question, that what are the arteries and nerves we need to know. So we need to know all the arteries, all the nerves, but the emphasis should be on the major, main, big ones, and which are responsible for the major areas. Thus, any question emerging from this discussion, but whatsoever we have said so far?
Sir, did you put any nerves on the screen, or because
No, I did not put. I
you're
did not.
just explaining verbally, right?
I was just answering this question.
Okay,
It
okay.
was a very generalized question. That's why I didn't show any nerve. I didn't show any artery. So I just put these generalized questions. So then I will be going into the further detailing part. Are we fine?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's proceed for the next question. So what is the meaning of a terminal branch of an artery, vein, and nerve? Terminal branch means where this nerve is ending. Ending by two ways. Ending as such, it's the final branch, or this artery, this nerve, this vein changes its name. So that is called the terminal part. Understand? I hope it's clear. So terminal means where you are, like my axillary becomes brachial. So that's the termination of my axillary. Brachial becomes radial and ulnar. That's the termination of my brachial. So this is how we keep on counting. Okay. So now this question, if an artery pierces a muscle, does that mean it supplies it? And should we know that common palmar digital arteries and it form a deep arch of the radial artery? So I'll take one by one. Guys, these questions are just the way you have written, the way I have received. I have not changed a single word. So now the question is, if an artery pierces a muscle, usually the place where arteries are piercing a muscle, there is a gap across. They are not going like nerves, because what happens? Because these muscles, when we are using them, Atas, who's using these annotations? Can you ask this person, or can you block the annotation thing? Somebody is painting on the screen.
I
know
don't
by
have control. Could you
Okay.
could you disable it?
I think because I kept it open for the purpose of drawing, but people are
Like you could
I-
disable it from the others only.
okay. I'll see to that. Because you are the host. I'm a co-host. So I think the authority is with you.
Oh,
Okay, let them play. If there is a child, we cannot help them. It's okay. So if an artery pierces a muscle, does it mean it supplies it, guys? Arteries usually don't pierce it as such the way nerves are. And if it's going close by, yeah, it will be supplying it. But we're not, and you know that, but the area of supplies are different. But if it's going through that muscle, it's usually leaving a gap in that pertinent area. Now, the second part of the question is, should we know the, should we now, it's not now, it's no actually, the common palmar digital arteries and is it formed from the deep arch of the radial artery? Listen, guys, I told you when we make these superficial and deep palmar arches, there are common palmar, this and that, so many names. Don't go in those. Simply remember, ulnar artery makes superficial arch. Radial artery makes deep arch. And now my radial artery, the deep arch gives two branches. And my superficial arch gives rest of the digital branches. So you need to know this much. No further details are required. I think I have answered this question as much was needed. Okay, so now going further. Now this was asked a lot. Dr. Sadia has spent time on that, on explaining this concept. So let me try to revisit how I can help people. It's big, but it's fun. So guys, this is the situation. We are good that this is the subclavian artery. And then we all know the subclavian artery becomes axillary artery. There is no rocket science in that. So axillary artery, the subclavian artery, before becoming, because this is my first rib, this is my first rib. And at this place, this artery is called, subclavian artery is called, from here, outer border of the first rib, downwards. We call it now axillary artery because it has entered axilla. Before that, it gives a thyrocervical trunk. Now, from this thyrocervical trunk, we get these two branches. And these branches are, you can see that we have deep branch of the, so basically it's going transversely, transverse cervical artery. So it's a deep branch of it. And then we have suprascapular artery. So these two branches, they have been derived from this thyrocervical trunk. And they are going downwards. Suprascapular, above the scapula. It comes here, goes behind it. Behind where you can see that. It's coming. This is my subclavian. So it's coming, suprascapular. And this one, deep branch of transverse cervical artery. Are we good? So now what we can do, I should take the small one. So now this is the source of what? A branch from subclavian artery. Are we fine? And they are coming and they are contributing. So this is the posterior aspect of my scapula because I can see the spine of the scapula. This is the medial border. This is the lateral border. So this is on the back. this is on the front. So you can mix and match two views. Now, from here, this artery, its name has changed. We call it what? This is my excellent axillary artery. So now this axillary artery, situation is what? A clot comes and this is blocked somewhere here. So now once this is blocked at this place, now blood cannot go. So it means what? The person will develop ischemia. The whole hand, the whole upper limb will become avascular. You know, becoming avascular means what? It will turn ultimately blue, black, and then you have to chop away. You have to amputate this whole upper limb. And that's something disaster. So nature has provided some shortcuts, tahwilat, detours, and these are helpful in maintaining. Fine, it's not that good quality, but for time being, there is a chance for survival. So what is happening in that situation? In that situation, what is happening? That we are using this pathway. We are using this pathway and look at it. Look at this place. Let me convert it into, yes. So now, this one, my axillary artery, it's coming down. It is blocked at this place. We talk about that. So once it is blocked, now what happens? Let me get a pointer. Yes. So now this artery is blocked here. So blood cannot go down, cannot reach to my brachial artery, radial artery, ulnar artery. So what happens? This source, which we have highlighted on the costal surface and on the dorsal surface, what is happening? The blood starts being shunting. The blood will be shunted. Detour, tahwilat, it will be coming through these sources. And one is coming across the medial border. You can see that my D branch of the transverse cervical artery, it sends across this medial border. And this one is sending above this. There's a notch here in the superior border of the scapula. And this suprascapular artery passes from there, goes under the spine, and then it reaches here. So what happens? They are coming down. Suprascapular artery, and then this D branch of the transverse cervical artery. So there you can see that it turns around. It goes all the way. So the blood flow is being directed either through this channel or through this channel. And then ultimately, what is happening? And they have so many communication. So blood can, you can follow the direction of these arrows. Ultimately, you know, basically this is the second part of my subclavian artery. So somebody can put it that second part is blocked. So now, if the blockade is here, then nothing is happening. This limb, you have to do the surgery. And I can tell you guys, this is happening. This is not a rare thing. I have seen such cases, and it's a disaster. I remember it once. It was there was a big snowstorm and a big problem. Everything was closed, and we received a patient in our ER, and that lady, there was no pulses present in her arm. And then we are, you know, it was a remote area and there were limitation of supplies and services, but somehow we managed, and we don't have much of the facilities in that hospital. So what we were able to do, we have to insert a special tube because we, you know, there were blockade was somewhere here. So this option was not working. And this lady presented with that her hand was turning pale. The whole upper limb was turning pale, white. And then if he could have leave it as such, then next day morning, this whole thing could have been amputated. The hand could have gone, and it could have been a disaster for that person. So we have opened up, we have made an access to the subclavian artery, and we were able to manage to remove this clot, and then flow started and everything went fine. And I still not forget that lady. She was discharged after 4 or 5 days. Anyways, so now the blood starts coming through these collateral channels, and they are connected to what? These collaterals, they are derived from a branch of subclavian artery, that is thyrocervical trunk. So blood is being traversing in different direction, and ultimately it's being poured to reach to this subscapular artery through its different connections. I'm not going into the names of these different connections. You can see it yourself. And then now blood is coming. Well, it's not that strong, that big quantity, but there is a quantity. And if this problem persists for longer period, even these vessels, they may modify, they become more big. So they can accommodate, and there is, but still the problem will be there. But this limb will survive till you do the definitive treatment, which I have discussed with you, that what we have done in that case of that lady. So we have to dislodge, we have to remove this clot, and then the flow was established and things were fine. I think she was sent home after 2 days. So I hope I made this point clear. Any question, anything which bothers here?
Doctor, I have some questions here.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first question goes, what's the difference between a vascular necrosis and infraction, or are they the same?
Can you say it again? A vascular necrosis, and what was the second part?
Okay, 1 minute.
Uh,
Um,
let me open the...
okay, what's the difference between a vascular necrosis and infraction, or are they the same?
Listen, avascular necrosis is what happens. Necrosis means what? Death of something. Avascular means, A means no, la. In Arabic, you call la, means no. Avascular means no vessel. Vessel is blocked. If there is no vessel, means vessel is blocked. Vessel is not working. Avascular necrosis. So a necrosis which occurs due to loss of nutrition. And infarct is also a term, that is also a term which is connected to this avascular necrosis. Because after infarct, you heard this term infarct, myocardial infarct. So basically, the coronaries get a blockade, and ultimately this infarct leads to the death of that part of the heart which was supplied, which was getting nutrition, and then patient develops myopathies. So infarct and avascular necrosis are well interconnected terms. So does the circumflex scapular artery and the thoracodorsal artery also contribute to this anastomosis? You can see it, it's very clearly written. You can see it here, that how they are basically, they all are interconnected. And ultimately, if my subscapular artery is not working, nothing is possible. Then it's a different picture. Even this is not ultimate. I will take this topic further. Even the blockade is there, then we have some other things also. But we are not complicating your understandings. Right now, we are just giving you a simpler version of understanding. But if you see the schedule, there is a lecture of mine which is about clinical anatomy. There I'll be bringing more concepts, more collateral channels, more anastomosis, more established pathways where you can have further deep down learning things. And that will be introduced later part, because I believe in that information should be released slowly, so people can accommodate with all the things. So if blood coming to the third part through the deep branch, and if there is no chance for ischemia, what was the symptoms of this lady? Guys, the symptoms always, if blood is not coming, that part, that extremity will become pale. You can do yourself. Just put your hand on your wrist and apply a pressure, or put a blood pressure measuring device. Just inflate it. And then you can see, suddenly you can see your hand starts getting pale. And if you leave it, it will go blue. And if you don't do anything, there will be some kind of pain. And then ultimately it goes black. So this is called ischemia. And this leads to avascular necrosis. And that will lead to gangrene formation. And gangrene is end stage. Everything is gone. So if somebody don't get, and if you release this pressure for a while, you can see your hand, the palmar aspect of your hand, the skin starts from pale. You should not wait for that. It should turn blue and black. No, don't try it. So even it turns blue, just release the pressure. You can see that it starts getting pinkish again. So that's what the vascularity. If you block the common, the main vessels, radial and ulnar artery, and then you can see the blood starts going in, and your whole palmar aspect of your hand will be showing you from pale to pink appearance. I hope I have answered this question. Anything else? Nihal was asking that question.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another question. When is it a disaster? When the blockage is in the third part of the axillary or in the subclavian?
Look, disaster is if blood is not going. Don't care for that. If I have a channel available, let me give an example. You have to reach uni, and now Takhasusi Street is closed for some reason. And from the backside, the Khalid and the other roads have been closed. So now how you'll reach the uni and you have your final exam? So now if you have, unless you have an heli, then you may come to uni, otherwise there's a disaster. So there are channels, there are collaterals. So you can use streets, small streets through between the houses and all that you may reach. So remember, when there's a blockade and blockade doesn't come for, oh, the blockade is only coming for second part, blockade only going for third part, it can occur at any place. If we have collateral, it will give a window for a short survival. But this person should be reached to a hospital. There they should do the definitive treatment. This is not the teaching that, oh, second part is blocked, let the patient sleep at home. No way. Rush to the hospital. They have to do something. I think let's proceed further.
Yes.
Okay. So now, these are the beautiful drawings. So I think I should remove all of them. Where are you, my razor? So now, anastomosis of what? Anastomosis around the elbow joint. So to understand that, you were shown this image. Am I right or wrong? And there is, on this image, you're looking at different vessels. And these different vessels are, let me take a pointer. Now see here, we all know this is brachial artery. Are we good? Okay, so this is my brachial artery. And now brachial artery, it gives one of its branch, profunda brachii artery. Are we good so far? This profunda brachii, it further gives, it divides into two branches. So what are those two branches? Let's label them. One is, guys, there are so many names. So, and your books are usually talking these names. There were other names, but I have removed them on purpose. So we call this one, which is going behind, we call it middle collateral artery. And one which is going in front of my lateral epicondyle, we call it, and then it goes this middle collateral artery. And what is that? Let me go back on this slide without showing you this now. My profunda brachii, it becomes two branches. And then my brachial artery bifurcates into radial artery and ulnar artery. Are we good? So now from this ulnar artery, you remember this ulnar artery, I draw in my images, it's little bigger. And I said when it reaches to the interosseous membrane, the beginning of the interosseous membrane at this place, we call it common interosseous artery. Common interosseous, one branch of that, it goes posteriorly. Posterior to what? Interosseous membrane. And one branch was going anterior to the interosseous membrane. So we call them anterior interosseous artery, posterior interosseous artery. Anterior interosseous artery was supplying the deep structures or the structures in my flexor compartment of the forearm. And the posterior interosseous artery supply the structures in the extensor compartment or the posterior compartment of my forearm. Are we good? So now from this common, this common interosseous, we get an artery which is going behind this. It's not going above this. It's going behind this. And that is interosseous recurrent. Today, in hand lecture, I was using this term recurrent. Recurrent means it forgot something. It's returning back. It's going upwards. Who's going upwards? intraosseous recurrent. Towards whom? It's the main purpose of this one is going towards my middle collateral artery. And where it is happening? Behind my lateral epicondyle. Are we good with that? So now let's click it here. So you can see that intraosseous recurrent artery, which is a branch from my common intraosseous artery, it's going upwards. That's why it's called recurrent. To meet the middle collateral artery, which is one of the terminal branch of my profunda brachii artery. Are we good so far? Now, who's this second branch, which goes in front, which goes anterior? We call it radial collateral artery because it's on radial side. Easy clue. So this radial collateral artery is the one of the terminal branch of my profunda brachii. It's going downwards. And from below, from radial artery, I'm getting radial recurrent artery. So radial recurrent artery is going towards this direction. And they are making what? You can see that they are making at this place an anastomosis. And this one. So guys, can you match yellow to yellow, green to green? So radial collateral coming from where? Is one of the terminal branch of my profunda brachii. Anastomosing with whom? Radial recurrent artery. So my radial artery gives a branch. Radial forgot to do something. So it's sending back someone, oh, go backwards. So they are meeting in front of my lateral epicondyle of my humerus. So that is we are talking about the lateral side. And now coming on the medial side, what happens? Here we have used now profunda brachii. It's done. Now from my main brachial artery, I have superior ulnar collateral artery and I have inferior ulnar collateral artery. So this superior and inferior ulnar collateral arteries, why I use the term collateral? Because they are going lateral to this. They are going parallel to this. Let's say this is your main horace and these are the small roads which are interconnecting. So these are the small channels. That's why they are called collaterals. So now what happens? Superior ulnar collateral, this one, it's going downwards. To meet whom? It's going and it's meeting what? Let's see who's the one. You can see in this image, posterior ulnar recurrent. Because why recurrent? Because it's going upwards and it's coming from the ulna. So purple to purple. So posterior ulnar recurrent, which is going upwards, and it meets with my superior ulnar collateral. Anastomosis happening. Are we good? So I left with another branch. So this was superior ulnar collateral with posterior ulnar collateral. So that was happening. This is my medial epicondyle. Now, the inferior ulnar collateral, which is going just medial to that. And what happens with this one? It meets with whom? Anterior ulnar recurrent. So from my ulnar artery, I have two recurrent branches. What were those? Posterior ulnar recurrent, anterior ulnar recurrent. And from my brachial artery, I was having superior ulnar collateral and inferior ulnar collateral. So what they do, so this red to red, purple to purple, yellow to yellow, green to green. Can you remember this way? And there's a very easy mnemonics. I am so pretty. Do you doubt in that? See, I, inferior ulnar collateral, M, anterior. So they are together. If you want to memorize it, I am so pretty. S from here, P from here. So I'm so pretty. So if you forget about this and this side working, so this mnemonics, this is called mnemonics. So we are using each starting word of this sentence, and this will be helping us to memorize this. This is the easy way of memorizing the concepts. Now let's look further. Another image is there for you. And there you can see, let's move this one a little away. There we go. So now you can see here again, brachial artery coming all the way down at the neck or head of the radius. It divides into radial and ulnar artery. Any problem with that? No problem. So it gives one of the branch profunda brachii. Profunda brachii, we know it goes behind my humerus. It runs where? What is that area where it's moving? This we call it as radial groove or spiral groove, along with my radial nerve. So it's coming down, it divides in two branches. So what were these two branches? Medial collateral and radial collateral. One was going behind, one was going in front. And they were anastomosing. We talk about that my ulnar artery gives a common introitius. And from my common introitius, you can see that a branch which is going upwards. Who was that branch? That branch was my introitius recurrent artery, because it's coming from the introitius. Recurrent means it's going backwards. So it's going backwards, it's going behind my lateral epicondyle to meet with whom? To meet with my middle collateral artery. And from the front, which is derived from the radial artery, it's going to the radial collateral. So radial recurrent to the radial collateral. And similarly, now I have these branches, superior ulnar collateral, inferior ulnar collateral, which was going down to meet their counterparts. Those are, who are those? Those were inferior ulnar collateral. They were going to superior ulnar collateral. So these were the two which was going from above. So they have to meet with what? Posterior ulnar recurrent and anterior ulnar recurrent. Both of them, they are coming. One is coming in front, one is going behind of what? Of my medial epicondyle. Somebody is asking me, does the brachial artery, brachial also branch in the humeral nutrient artery? Yes, it is. There are so many branches. There are muscular branches, there are articular branches. But what we are mentioning here, those arteries which are contributing in making this plexus. Are we clear? Any issue?
Sir, how could the questions be on this? Can you give us an example, please?
This is a interesting part. So you want me to tell you what we can do? We can say somebody, we can make a story. So and so, this age presented with a stab injury, and angiogram shows blockade of this artery. Now, blood is still reaching distally. Which of the following arteries contribute in bringing the blood downwards? So we can put fake examples. Let's say I'm making an anastomosis, the natural anastomosis between this green and green. So I can put one green, one yellow. So that is wrong. One green and one purple. That is wrong. And one of the example is purple to purple. Got it? Or an Alpha student is learning about anastomosis around the elbow. So which of the following artery, they are helpful in making an anastomosis around the elbow? So I can put for this yellow, green, for this green, purple. So, but red to red. So that remains the right option, and all other I can mix and match the terms. And I like to use your friend who was writing, who was that? Yusuf was writing nutrient artery. So I can put a nutrient artery with muscular artery. So the thing which don't exist, or something which is similar. You understand? Mutashabih. Something which is quite similar to that. So you can play with these things, and an MCQ has been created. You need not to open a book or resource or anything. I hope we are clear. Any person have any further question? Please feel free to ask.
So only one artery has anastomosis with radial artery?
No. The point is this, that we will be using one, it's in context to your question, that how an MCQ can be made on that. MCQ can be made on this, on the basis of we can select one right option and other we can mix and match. So this is how an MCQ can be created. Am I clear?
Yes, Doctor.
Sure, anybody wants me to do something more? Because I know this was very nicely explained by Dr. Sadia, and I thought it's done, but I have seen so many people were asking about this. Anyway, and it's better asking today rather than regretting tomorrow. Maybe sitting in your exam, and then you'll be cursing why we were not. Somebody was asking me, it was explained in the structure of the week session. Will it be part of the exam? Gentlemen, ladies, what we are talking in lectures, in labs, in evening labs, through our formal and informal discussions, on our discussion boards, on our structure of the week lab activity, Everything is part of your learning. So please pay attention to every detail. And by the time you should be learning what is more important, what is less important, and then you can make your own justice. Don't waste your time for those things which are really just for there, because there are so many things for fancy purposes. But we are not really targeting those fancy things. We are just really meaning what is really needed, because there are so many details. I'm personally, I don't like to go into those minor details which are really not needed. And you guys are, you guys are beginners. I see you all as babies. So why I should stress a baby with something big? Let's grow big, then we'll talk. So doctor, so anastomosis is the branch it comes from, really? What, Shima, what are you asking? Can you write it? Can you rephrase yourself? Anastomosis is the branch it comes from. Anastomosis basically is a pattern. Anastomosis is a pattern. Let me draw something more for you. Someone is, this is a main pathway. Now it has been blocked at this place. Now I have something which comes like this, or I have something which is coming from here, something which is coming from here, is dividing, it is dividing, and then it is dividing, it is further going down, and there I can make an communication between these. So now, as this channel is blocked, so now there is an anastomosis has been made, a union place. These are the collaterals primarily. So this is how we have those established communication, that if this channel is blocked, in those situations, these vessels become big. They can carry the load of this. I'm sure they will not. They are not made for that purpose, but something is possible than nothing. Shima, am I able to answer your question? You have the right to say no. Job is to make you clear. Thank you very much. Guys, if you don't understand something, you have the right to say no, and I will try over. Let's proceed further. So now somebody is asking, what has been asked? Artery branches and anastomosis in forearm region is the same thing. We talked about it. Review hand muscle and the palmar arch. I have this slide. I'll be coming shortly. Don't worry for that. Here you go. What we were talking. Guys, this is upside down. I purposely, I rotated this image. So ulnar artery. We all know this is my pinky, my 5th digit. So ulnar artery is coming all the way, making a superficial arch, connecting with a radial artery. Now, then it supplies both the sides of my digit number 5, digit number 4, digit number 3, and half of my digit number 2. Radial artery, it is you see, it's going inside, it's deep, it pierces someone, and then it is responsible to supply my digit number 1 and half of my digit number 2. So these are my superficial and deep palmar arches, and this is a, guys, you need to know only this much. Radial artery makes my deep arch. Radial artery makes my deep palmar arch, and ulnar artery makes my superficial palmar arch. Radial artery, through its deep palmar arch, it supplies my digit number 1 and half of my digit number 2. And superficial arch, which is coming from ulnar artery, that is supplying my digit, half of my digit number 2, full of digit 3, all of digit 4, and all of digit 5. Are we good? So this is what your first part of your question, palmar arch. Then you are interested in knowing about muscles, but before, I have another image which I think may help you to see things in a different way. Look at it. This is my first, guys, the first thing is always establish where is radius, where is ulna. So this is my radial bone. Is it radial? No, this is ulna. Don't confuse. This is radius. So radial artery. Look at it. It comes here, make a deep arch. Supplies where? Supplies to my this digit. Complete. Supplies half of this. And then ulnar artery, make a superficial arch. Why superficial? Because it lives superficial. And it supplies my fifth, fourth, third, and half of second. So this is how my arches are working. So now thus, anybody is still in doubt about these, please ask.
Yeah, could you repeat? Someone is asking if you could repeat.
Repeat. You should ask the question. If you want to repeat, it is already been recorded. Go and listen to that.
Okay, the question is,
Ask the question. What is not clear?
if there's a cut at the base of the thumb, will the deep palmar arc be
One
affected?
minute. Let me get a pen. Yes, say it again.
Okay, if there's a cut at the base of the thumb, will the deep palmar arc be affected or the superficial palmar arc?
If there is a cut at the base of the thumb. So where is the base of the thumb? So this is the base of the thumb. So there are more chances of this radial. And the second part is, if there is a cut at the base of the thumb, will the deep palmar arch be affected? Yes, it will be affected. If it's deep enough, it will chop it away. And then my first digit and second half of second digit will be compromised. They will get blood, but it will not be, because blood can come from here to, there are so many communications. So blood can reach, but that's not good. And if you don't do it, guys, if you minus thumb from your hand is nothing. So now somebody is asking, so radial artery, where is that? So radial artery supply only first digit and half of the second digit. Excellent. And then Ashwana is asking, along with this, we have also got veins, right? I mean, we have taken it, but is it there, right? Ashwana, the veins are arranged differently. There are not vena committant. So we have dorsal venous arch. And then on the palmar side, we don't have, have you seen veins visible on your palmar side? Never. You can see only on your dorsum, because there we need them. So that don't mix this concept. So now Lean is asking, so in general, we should know radial artery, deep arch, perfect, first digit, half of second digit, ulnar artery, superficial arch, half of second, third, perfect. Lean, you come up with a very nice answer. Then why does the superficial branch of the radial and deep branches of the ulnar seems to form an anastomosis? Does it? Yeah, it looks like, but it's really not. Deep is making, but I have dissected a big number of hands, and hardly I found the superficial arch. Even I am yet to find where is the communicating one. Well, for theoretically, it's good to say yes, but practically not yet. So is that all the details we need to know for the arteries in the hand? Just what digit is supplied? Yeah, perfectly. We're not a candidate for a PhD program. You are just a candidate for year one medical science. That's it. Year one MBBS. You're not a PhD program student, so this is enough. So how could the ulnar palmar arch get damaged? You put a knife, cut it, and then if there is a traumatic thing, some arrow, some bullet, something, so it can be damaged. So is the radial bursa, from where you bring bursa? We're talking arteries. From where? So Amru, don't bring bursa here. Is the radial bursa passes through the carpal tunnel? Yeah, okay. So radial bursa passes through the carpal tunnel. If you remember, I will bring that picture. Then I will talk it over, because people are a bit confused that what bursa is and what all is that. But remind me for that. Can we please review the nerves of the hand? Sure, Aya, we will. Okay, what's the name of the arteries in the digits coming branch from the deep and super? Just remember them as digital arteries. Need not to go in detail. If you want to make trouble for yourself, learn and memorize your name, but we're not asking, we're not interested. If you don't know it, I'll be more happy. So deep palmar arch is affected, it will be blood supply to the thumb. Yes, perfect, great. That's good, you're learning. Are we required to know common? I said it so many times, don't waste your time for that. Okay, are we?
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking.
Should I ask?
Hmm.
How about if the hand got stabbed?
How about, yeah, somebody's writing from the we can hear you, but students are not admitted yet. Now I'll admit them, unmute you, make a task admin, and we can start. No problem. Proceed. Let them do this. Atas, in the meantime, keep asking me.
Okay. Okay. 1 minute. How about if the hand got stabbed? Did you answer this question?
The hand got stabbed where? I need to know that. I need to know the location. You know, if I have an injury, there should be a place for that injury. Then the effects of the injury will come accordingly.
In the palm.
In the palm, but where? Here, here, here. So what is the location? If it's puncturing a vessel, then all these things. If you are just missing, if you are lucky enough, then nothing will be happening, or you have some bleeding, and then it's all fine.
In the center of the palm. Sorry.
Center of the palm is this one. Let me draw it for this person. Where are you? This is center of the palm. So now what will be affected? So those tendons which are passing through this, they will be damaged. Long tendons, flexor digitorum superficialis, profundus, they are here. Anything else?
Yes, there is a question. Where are IV needles inserted?
We never insert IV needles in artery. IV means intravenous. We give medicine in the veins. We don't give medicine in the arteries, because if you give in the artery, it's not going to the heart. The medicine will go and accumulate in your hand. So we have to give in the vein. So vein will take this medicine to your heart. And from the heart, it will be pumped to whole of the body, because medicine does not know where is the pain. It will go and block all the receptors, and then it will be effective. So it's a thing. Somebody is asking, Faris is asking, what is anastomosis? Anastomosis is a place where so many things are joining with each other. Let me show you with example. So can you see that there are so many arteries that are joining with each other? This is called anastomosis. Anything else?
Nothing.
Hmm?
The common synovial sheath, the ulnar bursa, does it pass through the tunnel?
I said that I will be talking about that shortly. Let me come to that.
Okay.
Why is the levator scapulae mentioned as not? Khanis Fatma, you could have sent this question. Anyway, I can answer you. If you look at that, there is C3, C4, C5, and there is it's the part of the main nerve which is supplying my levator scapulae, that is not from brachial plexus. That is from the cervical plexus. That's why it's been written that it is not controlled by directly from brachial plexus. This is controlled by someone else. It's not a mistake. Sharuk, it's not a mistake.
Okay, there are two more questions.
So change the day of TBL? No, we are not doing it. How many TBL will be changing? I think all TBLs are connected with one midterm. Physiology is very hard. Really? Okay, we'll see to it. Why they make it hard? Know the arteries and veins. They are hard. Can you please do a quick review on the arteries, nerves, and anastomosis of the upper limb, because they are confusing. Sarah, I was doing this right from the beginning. Almost I spent an hour and I was just talking about these. Where were you before? So is this session recorded? Yes, Atas is recording that. I know it. It will be available for you. And if need arise, I can make some small videos for you, and they will be visible for you for your quick learn. So just
Doctor, there's a question here.
Hmm.
Do we use the base of the thumb as the point of access for differentiating between deep and superficial palmar arc?
Yeah, I mentioned this point in the, people have to understand web space and base of the thumb. The base of the thumb is used for pointing towards the deep arch, and the first web space is used for pointing towards the superficial arch. But remember, when we write question, we always try to make it that people should understand. So now Sarah is asking, does the circumflex scapular artery and the thoracodorsal artery also contribute? I have shown it there, Sarah. If blood coming to the third part, I have so many items to do. You guys are just, I know I think you guys love arteries because everybody is with the arteries. So Leon is asking, is it when medial collateral artery goes down, it becomes intraosseous artery?
Doctor,
No,
you're
Leon.
reading the old comments.
Yeah, I'm trying. So he's saying when medial collateral artery goes down, it becomes, no, intraosseous artery, intraosseous recurrent is a branch which is coming from common intraosseous. And we all know common intraosseous is a branch of ulnar artery. Normally what we have learned that common intraosseous become anterior intraosseous and posterior intraosseous. So this recurrent intraosseous is basically is like common intraosseous forgot to send something. So it's sending back, somebody is going back, and then it meets with its counterpart. Are we good? So now I think we should proceed further. There's a lot of 28. Wow. So now thank you is appearing. Yes, thank you. So now let's move further. So bursa and painful arc syndrome. Okay, so the word bursa is a pillow-like thing, a sac of mucous membrane filled with synovial fluid. That's called bursa. And wheresoever we have friction, this bursa is there. And the job of the bursa is to minimize wear, tear, friction. And painful arc syndrome is when I am doing abduction, adduction, flexion, adduction, circumduction at my shoulder joint. If my bursa is inflamed, if my tendon of supraspinatus is inflamed, I will having difficulty in moving my arm, my upper limb at the shoulder joint. And any smallest movement will cause significant pain, and these people will be restricted and they are not moving their hand because it becomes painful. Then they go to the doctor, they get injection, they eat medicines, and a worse to worse situation, it got frozen. We call it frozen shoulder. And for these patients, what we do, we take them to OR, we give them anesthesia, we let them sleep, and because it's so painful, they cannot even allow to touch you. So we let them go sleep. When they are sleeping, then we are under anesthesia. Now they are not aware what is happening. We are forcefully moving the whole shoulder joint. And once it's been moved freely, because there are adhesions formed in between and they are freezing this movement. So once these adhesions has been broken, we don't do surgically, we're just maneuvering. So after that, we give some intra-articular injections, some pain relief, some kind of local anesthetic. Then we subject them for physio for a longer period, and slowly, these people will regain. And this is how we treat the painful arc syndrome. It depends on what stage you got a patient and how much is being affected, and then you'll be doing respective treatment plans. Guys, there's not one size fits all. It's according to the problem of an individual, and then you have treatment plan according to that what somebody is presented to you. I hope I have answered this question. Is there anything connected to your bursa and painful arc syndrome? Quickly write in your chat box. Yalla. Are the rotator cuff bursitis and subacromial bursitis collectively called? No, painful arc is movement of your arm at the shoulder. These bursas are not. Supraspinatus muscle is one of the rotator cuff muscle, and its tendon I emphasize 2 times, one in the structure of the leaf session, once another time that it is going through the bony structure. There is a very narrow space, and if I'm doing too much, so there are fair enough chances. Is it only tendon of the supra that is vulnerable? No, there are so many things. Painful arc is caused by inflammation of the bursa. Yes, it can be. For the tendon, yes, it can be. could any nerve or artery injury happen in pain? Usually, nerve is there is a term used, impingement. Impingement means, like, the median nerve is impinged in a carpal tunnel syndrome. It's been clasped, it's been squeezed, it's been pressurized. So all these bursas which are close to this, they are affected, and then they will be any movement may cause a pain. When what is a painful arc? When I'm moving my arm from an adducted format to an maybe 60-degree, 90-degree abduction. So that is the painful arc syndrome. The range is more. It says from 30 to 140, 150, something like that. It was mentioned in my early presentation, the first presentation. So if a person cannot hold a paper between thumb and index, is it because of damage to the ulnar nerve? Yes, we will be talking about it. Sabr. Wait. Thank you very much. Yazan, you gave me the right range, 40 to 120. Does the subscapularis bursa also cause painful? Yes, it can. But subscapularis, remember, it's inside the subscapularis. So if I have a rotatory movement occurring so maybe at the end of abduction, I will have a pain, because all these things are well connected. So ulnar nerve is affected in the painful arc syndrome? Usually not. Ulnar nerve is far away. That's a different story. This is all about things occurring across the shoulder joint. Will it be damage of the ulnar nerve or radial nerve if the issue between the thumb and index? Yeah, I'll be talking about that. I have some slides for that. Okay, so let's proceed further. Okay, somebody is asking, when we see an X-ray for reaction in mid shaft, why we always answer that damage in anterior supply. I'm unable to get Feroz. Can you rephrase yourself? Okay, now what is this? This was the question which was asked. Luckily, it came when people are inquiring about that. Claw hand deformity happens because if which nerve injury? Guys, corrected. So claw hand, this is a claw hand, a classic claw hand. This is an ulnar type of claw. Guys, there's a claw because of ulnar, claw because of median. So there are different claws. So look at it. What happens? Look at it. So these muscles are affected. And then sensation are gone here, 1.5 finger. And this is the classic presentation. And then this area. So this is an ulnar, this is not a classic ulnar claw. This is a different situation where we have involvement of the ulnar nerve, which has been shown in this image. Thank you, 4 and 5th. This is a lot, and I'm keeping it all for the clinical anatomy session. There I'll be going in most detail of the nerve injuries. Now, if we have a friction in the mid shaft, could we have danger, damage in anterior and posterior together? Friction or fracture? I don't know whose question is that.
I think she means fracture.
Yeah, Noreen, you are right. It was hand of benediction. You are right. I think fracture. Yes. If we have fracture in the mid shaft, could we have danger, damage in anterior and posterior together? Guys, if it's a fracture, both ends are, it could be, there are different kind of fractures. But the close related structures can be affected. So closely related structure to the mid shaft are, what are those structures? Those structures are my profunda, brachii, artery, and with radial nerve. Now, is the flexor carpi radialis tendon in the carpal tunnel? If you go back, there was a separate compartment for carpal tunnel. It is not included in carpal tunnel. Carpal tunnel have only 9 structures: 4 tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, 4 tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and 1 tendon of flexor pollicis longus. So these are the 9 tendons which are present in the carpal tunnel, and they are being affected by that. Now, you have shown that the 5th digit is only covered by the ulnar bursa. It is also covered by a synovial sheath. Ulnar bursa and synovial sheath, these are interchangeably used terms. I will show you because Yazan was asking this question. I will drag a picture and I will show you that. Don't worry for that. So now, guys, I found this is a really important slide. I kept it for after period, but remember that. Movement, what movement? Flexion. At proximal, which joint? Proximal phalangeal joint. So metacarpophalangeal joint. So which muscle is responsible for that? Lumbricals and interossei. Flexion of middle phalanx, PIP, flexor digitorum superficialis. Flexion of distal phalanx, flexor digitorum profundus. This concept has to be very clear. Extension of the proximal phalanx, who's doing it? So almost everything is done by this. And flexion of the middle and the distal phalanx, PIP and DIP, lumbricals and interossei. Abduction, dorsal interossei, we talk about it. Abduction, palmar interossei. Guys, this table is really important. Don't worry, I'll share with you this. But this especially this part is really important, that lumbricals and interossei, which joint they are acting. Flexor digitorum superficialis, which joint they are acting. Flexor digitorum profundus, which joint they are acting. Now, when we say a muscle is, what's that? Does it always have to be attached to the word? No, okay. Intrinsic, extrinsic. Guys, it's not necessary. Like you have learned in the lecture of the hand, those muscles which are coming from the bones of the hand, carpal bones or any bones and going within that. So those are intrinsic. Same goes with the scapulae. So the most of the intrinsic muscles are coming from the axilla, going to the axilla or staying within what? Pectoral girdle. They are not going out and in. So it's not with the vertebral column. Thank you very much, Dakhli. Okay, axillary nerve is a branch of the radial nerve. So why is considered as C5, C6 nerve instead of C5? Guys, axillary nerve has only C5 and C6 component from my main source. So only limited supply is going from there. Then if it was not the situation, then the same one was radial was supplying here, then coming back, supplying there, then coming back. So only those muscles which are controlled by C5 and C6, so their contribution is traversed by axillary nerve. That's why it's been said it has, okay, let me give you an example. Your dad has a pool of money. So that pool of money is for your education, your car, and your home. So now if you want to, if you are getting an admission, so why he should give you the money which he has kept for your residency training, your car and your house and all that? He will be only giving you that money which is used for studying at Al Faisal. So similarly, axillary nerve carries only that much component which is needed to supply in that area. So that's why out of this C5, C6, C6, C7, C8, T1, it only carries a select segment. That's why it's been called that axillary nerve only having this much component out of the big chunk. I think this example is not very good, but still it can help you. So, but why in the picture of ulnar claw you showed us fourth? Yeah, that is a, you know, by mistake it came, it was hand of benediction. It was not for ulnar thing. I'll show you both things. I have those. Don't worry for that. Posterior cord gives off axillary nerve before branching into radial. Posterior cord, its terminal branch is radial, and on its way, it gives so many branches. So one of them is axillary. Now, what is bicipital aponeurosis and its function? So here you go. Biceps, we all know, is a powerful flexor of the elbow, supinator of the forearm, but the chief flexor of my elbow is brachialis. During supination, bicipital aponeurosis draws the distal end of the ulna slightly anteromedially. So this bicipital aponeurosis is helping in doing this section. There are so many kinesiology details. On purpose, I'm not going into those. And most of your books are not talking about these things. So this has to be very clear. Are we good? So that is the function of bicipital aponeurosis, and this is what it's doing. It's just a fade out part. The main bicep goes in a tendon and attached onto the radial tuberosity. But this fade out part goes in opposite direction. So now, what are the chief stabilizers of the glenohumeral joint other than sits muscle? This is the chief stabilizer. Others are not chief stabilizers. Can we consider capsule be one of these stabilizers? Everything is stabilizer. But the chief, in your home, chief is one. Not everybody is chief. Your dad is a chief. Your mom is a chief. So one person is a chief. Not everybody is a chief. So the rotator cuff are the chief stabilizer, because when we talk about that, who's the main authoritative person? Let me give you an example. Trump. If I ask you who's the president of US, is Trump. Who is the other president of US? No, there is only one. Make sense? Now, does the long head help the stability of the glenohumeral joint? Yes. Long head of the biceps. You can see that the long head of the biceps, it crosses all the way up and it prevents upward dislocation of the head of the humerus. And there you're looking at. Now, just see very clearly. This is the capsule. Let me draw it here. This is the capsule of my glenohumeral joint. And now, within this capsule, I had superior, middle, inferior. It is inside the capsule. They are superior, middle, and inferior glenohumeral ligaments. Coming from glenoid, going to the humerus. And look at this. This is the long head of the biceps, which is going above through the sleeve and attached to the supraglenoid tubercle. So stabilize the head of the humerus not to be going upwards, not to be colliding at this place. Are we good? So, are the lumbricals formed by FDS? Lumbricals are coming from FDS tendon and going to XDS tendon. From flexor digitorum, not FDS, flexor digitorum profundus tendon going to extensor digitorum. Is the long tendon covered by fibrous capsule? Yes. When it's traveling through the bicipital groove, it is being plastered with the two lips through the transverse humeral ligament. Long head, not the short head of the biceps. Are we clear? This is the posterior aspect, this is the anterior aspect. What is the difference between coracohumeral joint and glenohumeral joint? Coracohumeral joint. Is there any joint called coracohumeral joint? Joint between coracoid and that is a ligament, gentlemen. And glenohumeral is the name of a joint. Sits, elbow, not shoulder. I think it means ligament. Yeah, you're right. Okay, it's okay, no problem. We all are prone to make mistakes. So guys, you can see it very clearly now in this image. Let's stay focused here. Let me erase everything. So you can see very clearly, we are inside a glenohumeral joint. And there you can see these are the internal contributors. Now this coracoacromial ligament is a separate entity which connects the coracoid process with the acromion part of my scapulae. And then this is the clavicle, which has been anchored with the coracoid process by the help of these two ligaments, trapezoid and conoid. They are anchoring it here. If they break, my clavicle will free and it will ride upwards. Are we good? Okay, so I think people are explaining to each other. That's a good sign. So let's proceed further. Okay, now I have put two images for you. This is the same image. The question, let's read the question first. The coracohumeral ligament is not part of the glenohumeral ligament. Yes, it's not part of that. We have seen it. It's between coracoid. Now see, this is the joint. Where are you, pen? Here you go. So now look at it. This is from, we are looking from where? We are looking from behind. So this is the fibrous capsule. And inside this fibrous capsule, this is the glenoid labrum. This is the head of the humerus. And this is the long head of the bicep, which is coming all the way, attached on the supraglenoid tubercle. And these are my superior, middle, and inferior. So this is within this green. And now I'm reinforcing it with red. That is my glenohumeral, the joint. And these are the three components of my glenohumeral ligaments. Are we good? And same is here, you can see them. They have been shown interchangeably. So I think we had explained what has been asked. Let's proceed for the next question. Okay. So now, does the acromioclavicular ligament is a part of the acromioclavicular joint? I didn't put the name. So this is acromioclavicular joint. The joint between acromion and the clavicle. So your question is, acromioclavicular ligament is a part of acromioclavicular joint, obviously. So this is my acromioclavicular joint, and acromioclavicular ligament is basically the one who is connecting these two. This is my sternoclavicular joint. And you see there are costoclavicular ligaments which are connecting here. Coracoclavicular ligaments which are stabilizing this lateral end, and they are stabilizing the medial end. And then interclavicular ligament connecting the two clavicles, and it has been anchored with the sternum at the jugular notch. I think this is clear. Any question? Okay, yes. Fine. Good. People know it, mashallah. So now, compartment syndrome. Guys, compartment syndrome means we have seen it throughout our learning of upper limb. Now we have started lower limb, that all my muscle groups are enclosed under the skin, under the superficial fascia, into a very thick fibrous band. That is called deep fascia. If we have some traumatic situation, if we have some very bad injury, if we have some sort of problem, so now there will be a swelling. And if it's crossing the limits, so it will be, because everything is enclosed. Let me draw it for you. Everything is enclosed. Now, these are the normal structure here. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3. Any name muscles. There's a bone inside. I have an artery here. I have a nerve here. I have a vein here. Now this muscle is damaged. This muscle is damaged. This muscle is damaged. So this muscle will swell up. This muscle will swell up. This muscle will swell up. So what happened? Pressure. And this outer core is very stiff. So pressure will be created outwards. Now outward is very tight. So this pressure will be coming inwards. Pressure will be coming inwards. Bone will not be affected. But who will be squeezed? This one. This artery will be squeezed. So now what happens? The blood supply will not reach to my hand. So the blood supply, because artery is being sandwiched here, so the blood supply will be decreased, compromised. So this hand will start turning pale and then ultimately black. So this is what compartment syndrome. And what is the treatment? Just split it here. You split it here, it will go like this. And then these muscles, whatsoever is there inside, that will be, there is a room. Now pressure will be decreased. So inside pressure will be minimized. So these structures will be relaxed. Are we clear? Okay, so let's go further. Now, somebody was asking me, what is Walkman syndrome? Guys, there is nothing called Walkman syndrome. The right word is Walkman's ischemic contracture. The term ischemic, the term ischemia is connected to the arterial supply. If my brachial artery in supracondylar fracture, we all know this is where we have, and this is the artery. If it's been damaged here, so blood supply compromised, and this will be the condition of the hand, and this is called Walkman's schematic Are we good? So now, does it always accompany the dinner? No, it's not dinner fork. Guys, is it a dinner fork? Dinner fork is something like that. This is the handle. It will go like this. This is a dinner fork. But this is not, this is more than a dinner fork. This is something where you have seen this kind of dinner fork. Getting it? So that's the Walkman schematic contracture, and this is the classic of that. Okay, let's proceed further. Joint axis of metacarpophalangeal joint. Okay, let me draw it for you. This is my, let's say this is my metacarpal, any metacarpal, and this is my proximal phalanx, because proximal phalanx meet with the, so now the joint axis will be like that. This is the joint axis, because either I'm bringing here flexion or I'm bringing here extension. It will be running transversely. Are we clear? If flexors of the elbow damage, then the elbow will be extended. Obviously, it will not be, so it will not be flexed, it will remain extended. So Walkman is due to radial nerve damage? No, Walkman is due to damage of your brachial artery, and usually it's been seen, where in supracondylar fracture, if somebody is not doing, axis is not clear. Okay. Let me talk about axis. If I have this axis, things can go around. So this is a vertical axis. If I have this axis, so things can move this way or they can move that way. If my axis is like that, I have a different type of action. So these axes are basically representing the joint movements. So the axis of this joint, basically question is joint axis of a metacarpophalangeal joint, in which direction it has been there. So this is the axis, because my, your hand, you can flex it or extend it. So if you see that, you are working in which plane? Superior, inferior. You're not rotating around. You're not in a transverse plane. Should we memorize axis? No, no need. Are you a kinesiologist? It's for your understanding. It's not for memorization. Don't waste your time. Guys, there are so many small things. You're not expected to go in those unless you're planning a PhD on that. Okay. Okay, let's proceed. Now, somebody was asking me. So here you go. I was asked to repeat the thenar and hypothenar eminence muscles. So guys, this is my first digit. So now look at this schematic picture. Ignore one. This is my adductor. Which adductor is this? Adductor pollicis. So it's not with thenar, neither with hypothenar. And now these muscles are opponents, flexor, abductor. 3 on this side, 3 on that side. And you can see them. You are looking at abductor digiti minimi. You are looking at opponents digiti minimi. If I put here the flexor digiti minimi, you cannot see them. That's why we have to remove it. Now on this side, you can see that abductor pollicis brevis. Then you are looking at, this is the adductor. Ignore it. Other muscle, if we go beyond, then we can find them. So now here you can see that this image, we have removed these. So inside, you can see the flexor digiti minimi brevis, and there you can see flexor pollicis brevis and opponents pollicis. So this is layer 1, this is layer 2. Are we good? See here. You're looking at this one. Number 4 is there. This is number 4. If I go down, I will see this 2 and 3. This is my 2 and 3. This one is number 7. This one is here. So if when I'll remove them, I'll find this deep inside, number 5. So this is the orientation of anything towards my thumb is thenar eminence, anything on my pinky is hypothenar eminence. But I don't think what is that? I think we took flexor digiti minimi brevis. We don't call it because we don't have longer. So we just simply say flexor digiti minimi. We talk about that. Which nerves are responsible for the opposition of the fingers? For the opposition of the finger, if you talk in terms of, the nerve who's controlling my thenar eminence muscle, that is median nerve. And the nerve who's controlling my hypothenar eminence, that is ulnar nerve. This muscle, ulnar nerve. My interossei, both sides, ulnar nerve. My lumbricals, here and here, median, and these two, ulnar. So this is the innervation of my muscles of, these muscles of the palm, intrinsic muscles of the hand. So this is the description. Are we good? Does the Walkman contraction, the flexor digitorum profundus, and there are so many things we are not going in those details. Walkman is ischemic contracture, perfect, mostly caused by supracondylar fracture, as he said. Yeah, supracondylar fracture involving brachial artery. Median nerve controls all thenar and ulnar controls all hypothenar plus. Are we fine? Okay, let's proceed. Any further question here? So we consider the opponent's pollicis as a thenar. Yes, it is. It's not consideration. These 3 muscles. 1, abductor pollicis brevis, opponent's pollicis, and who's this? Flexor pollicis. Guys, these names are same. Flexor, opponent's, abductor. Only here you say pollicis, here you say digiti minimi. And adductor pollicis is common. It's not with this side nor with that side. Opponent's digit is hypothenar. Yeah, anything digiti minimi is hypothenar. Anything pollicis is thenar. But remember, when we use for pollicis, because for pollicis we have longus also. So that's why we have to add the term brevis. But have you ever seen any muscle? Flexor, digiti minimi longus. Abductor, digiti minimi longus. We didn't heard of. So we need not to use brevis. So they are simple one name. Are we clear? So do we need to know the origin insertion? Alia, I don't know what to say. Which language I should speak? Tell me. I'm a multilinguistic person. Ask me. I can use the language which you understand. Then probably you'll understand. Only attachment. Perfect. Okay, let's proceed. Precision grip versus power grip, and how to identify if both are present in the image. Yes? Precision means what? Focus movement. This is precision. And power means what? You are applying energy on that. Let's say there's a screw. Your screwdriver is slipping. So you're holding the screwdriver on the edge of the screw by one hand. And with the other hand, you're applying full force. So the full force is your power grip. And the precise force where you're localizing at some place is the precision force. Let's say you have to insert a wire into a narrow hole. So with one finger, you're directing that wire into that hole. That is precision because you don't want to go it anywhere. And with other hand, you are pushing it hard so it can go inside. So that is power. I hope this is clear. Yeah, it's good. Alia, you have a good explanation. I like that. So now can you explain how the palmar ligaments are placed like are the collateral ligaments to the side? So collaterals are on the sides, palmars are on the surface, flat. They are like plates. And the palmar ligaments is on the top. No, they are on the bottom. And do the deep transverse metacarpal. What are you doing? Are you planning for a PhD? Relax. From the hand, pay attention on intrinsic muscles, their nerve supply, their action, deep and superficial arches, and the sensory supply. The motor supply is different, sensory supply is different. So guys, broadly, I'm done with the bunch of the questions which has been sent to me. Now I like to no, I don't want ink annotations. So now I like to put something more for you. At the moment, I'm out of your, I'll be sharing another screen with you. Don't worry for that. There I'll be showing, these guys were asking. So I like to share for you. Okay. Out of this thing, screen sharing. Yes, here you go. Share this one. Let's make this one big. So now, where are you, my friend? There you go. You're asking me about ulnar bursa and radial bursa. Guys, 1 minute. Let me get a pointer thing. Anyway, I'm not able to get a pointer here. I don't know why. Anyways, so now this is the radial bursa. You can see that this synovial sheath is continuous. This is the another name of this flexor synovial sheath. We call it radial bursa. And look at this ulnar bursa. They all are passing through the carpal tunnel. We talk about 9 tendons. 4 tendons of flexor digitorum superficialis, 4 tendons of flexor digitorum profundus, and 1 tendon of flexor pollicis longus. Any other question about that? I have sent everything, Mariam. Still you need, it's all in layer. This is what image you get. It goes and it's all recorded. You know why I'm not uploading the PowerPoint version in a full PowerPoint way? Because it's a copyright issue. People take your stuff and then they will show you with their names. That's quite frustrating for me. And it happens a lot with me. And then I'm in a process of publishing a book and all those resource material. And, that's all under copyright. So that's why I'm not giving that way. But I'm trying, I make all the snapshots and I took in a sequence. So this PDF is almost as good as a PowerPoint. And then you have a recording as well. So you can combine them and then I think it's done. So guys, anything else? Wow, Lean, can you repeat what? What to be repeated? Yusuf, look at it. Every layer is there. What muscles are responsible for ulnar and radial deviation of the hand? Figure out yourself. Flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris. They are the main one and they have been associated with others. Can we view the nerves of the hand? I think I can show you on this one. So now a quick review of about the nerves. Look at it. Can you see that? The muscular branch of ulnar nerve supplies my hypothenar. And then the median nerve, its recurrent branch, it supplies the thenar eminence muscles. So the motor supply is done. Ulnar nerve supplies hypothenar, adductor pollicis, all the introssei, no matter palmar or dorsal, and half of the lumbricals. This lumbrical and this lumbrical. The remaining 2 lumbricals are done by median nerve. That is it. Then comes what? You can see that. The superficial branches, the sensory branches from my ulnar nerve supplies digit 5 and half of digit 4. And median nerve, all the sensation, digit 1, digit 2, digit 3, and half of digit 4. And this has been shown here. This is the ulnar nerve, sensory supply. Median nerve, sensory supply. Radial nerve, sensory supply. On the dorsum of the hand, ulnar nerve supply, radial nerve supply, and this yellow is the median nerve supply. And these are the places where we can test. Bursa pass under the carpal tunnel. Yes, I have shown you. Lean, where were you at that time? Look at it. This bursa is passing under your flexor retinaculum. So it's not under the carpal tunnel, through the carpal tunnel. You can see it here. Very clearly shown. Anything else, guys? Lumbricals originate from FDP tendon and attach to the extensor. Perfect, Jit. Excellent. How do we know where a nerve damage question is asking for palmar or dorsal side? You will understand that, don't worry. It's very structured and you will understand. Is it a general rule that when we have a problem with a specific function of a muscle, the opposing function is what manifests on the patient? Yeah, opposite action will become more prominent. So if my flexors are not working, my wrist will be dropped. Can you repeat the lumbricals? I will, but relax. This much, as much you know is enough. Rest we will talk for final. FDP tendon and attached to the extensor. Yes, right. So motor nerves are in general on the dorsal side of the hand. Who says on the dorsal side of the hand? They all are on the palmar side of the hand. Median nerve, ulnar nerve. What are they? Look at them. This one is the deep nerve. This one is the motor nerve. This one is the motor nerve. These are sensory. These are, and which view is this? This is the palmar view. Dorsal view we have what? Nothing. Okay, so I think we have covered all what we need to know. What deep branch of radial nerve supplies? Deep branch of radial nerve is your posterior intraosseous nerve. It supplies all the muscles present in the extensor compartment of the forearm. And then it has to do nothing, because on the dorsum of hand, do you have any muscle? Any intrinsic muscle present on the dorsum? No. All of them are basically, even the interossei, they are also innervated through the ulnar nerve. Ulnar, yeah, Jamal, ulnar, ulnar bursa inflammation can go up to mid palmar space. I will be talking in clinical anatomy session about there are so many spaces, pulp spaces and all those things, but not, not for today, not for this, for tomorrow. That is mid of November when you will be writing for final. There you need to be going in those details. I have specified, Amru, very clearly during today's talk, which one, who's doing what, and I told you I'll be sharing this small table with you. It's quite meaningful. Dupuytren's contracture was just introduced to you just to know it. Like, you should not say it's ulnar or radial. This is some localized hand condition. I think I have that slide with me in this, or I don't know, I purposely remove it. Yeah. Now there you can see, I have inserted more images. This was the hand drawing, and this is exactly the real picture of a hand. These are swan neck, Z deformity, so many names, but and these are the nodules. It's been mentioned here, but you cannot see them. But here these are the real images from patient's hand. Do we have to know it or no? These are just for your understanding that this is one of the condition. If you see a hand like that, at least you should know. If you know that this is rheumatoid arthritis, enough. We'll ask you when you are in finals, year 4, year 5. What is Lean's question? Should we know about Dupuytren's contracture? Don't waste your time. Yes. Yes, Sarah. What else? Is the question I asked you in email about the pulled elbow will be explained? No, I will talk about. Thank you. You have identified that, Fatun. Pulled out elbow, it has been explained in the more of the books, is primarily it says that under development of, because the things are in process in the early age of our life. So at that time, the annular ligament is not that strong. So it is difficult for that. There will be growing process occurring at the head of the radius, but primarily the less strength and less developmental changes is occurring, not the final picture. So annular ligament is weak. That's why that's the age. Otherwise, people can find in the pulled elbow in the senior ages, but it's not happening. Four corporal bones connect to the flexor retinaculum are, yes, you're right, Lean. I can text me, doctor, what is that bottom right pick? This one? These are the nodules. It's mentioned here, distorted IP joints with nodules and fibrotic contracture. So you can see these are those nodules, which are not very clear in this because it's a hand drawing. And these are the nodules. Can you please go over sensory innervation? Okay, Mashwar, but I will do it for you. Don't worry. So now this is the sensory innervation. On the palmar side, digit 1, 2, 3, and half of fourth, which nerve is median nerve. Palmar side, digit 5 and half of digit 4, ulnar nerve. These are the sensory supply. And going further, on the dorsum of the hand, half and half. Ulnar nerve, radial nerve, and these upper parts are my median nerve. Autonomous zones are areas of, like, the place where you can, for sure, this is, if I have to check, just if I'm allowed to touch a patient finger, I can say, oh, median nerve is fine or not fine, sensory part of it, so I can just touch those areas. So those are very precise area. Guys, remember this point very clearly. What we are talking is a bookish picture, a classic, but there are variations. There are variations, and one has to be very clear about those. Like people have heart on right side instead of having on left side. So nerve distribution, arterial distribution, muscle right and left. So there are so many possibilities. So those are called variations. And that's why these specific points have been, after so many studies, they have been figured it out that these are the definitive places where those nerve sensation is a must check. Like, this is the final place. If you don't find sensation, then you can say, yes, there is something wrong. Sensory innervation of the arm and forearm. Yes, it's very simple. Those cutaneous branches. I forgot to add in this. Anyway, we'll talk about it. Relax for that. It's okay. So Fatun, pulled out elbow, radial head is not yet fully developed is a reason, but not the primary. Primary reason is, the poor development of the annular ligament. The development of the head of the radius is the second point. But the first point, the key, guys, you remember today I told you, we look for the key answers, the key elements in your answer. So the key element is this. Dermatomes, we'll challenge you with the dermatomes, but relax. Motor function loss in digits. Is it in ulnar nerve? Remember, digits. Who control my digits? Flexor digitorum superficialis, profundus, and extensor digitorum. These are the one who control my digits. So is it ulnar nerve doing for them? Primarily is median nerve. Primarily is radial nerve. And then little part of the motor function is through the ulnar nerve. Sarah, are you clear now? Okay, motor function loss on digits is it ulnar? Motor function is different. time in learning dermatomes. We will see to that. Don't worry for that. I know my voice is leggy because some internet indication was arrived there. Radial head is removed from the ulnar head, right? I didn't get your, Faris, I didn't get your question. The radius head is removed from the ulnar head. Meryl, I was talking, yeah, I was saying about that don't put too much time for learning dermatomes. Just know a little bit. We will explain in detail and then you'll be engaged with that. If the injury happens in the dorsal side of the hand, like here in this picture, how to identify is the damage is radial nerve or ulnar nerve? You should check. Tell me which muscle of your hand is controlled by radial nerve. You're talking hand. Faris, get out of the pulled elbow. I gave you the answer. The radial nerve slips. So, radial nerve through its deep branch controls my extensor digitorum. So, if I cannot extend at the wrist, I cannot extend at proximal, distal, metacarpophalangeal joint. So, it means the damage is to the radial nerve. But for the flexion purposes, primarily, we have median and ulnar nerves. Okay, guys. So anything else? So now I can tell you one last suggestion. Guys, exam is always an exam. We know it. Learning for an exam is a science. But writing an exam is an art. So when you're coming for an exam, you should be having a proper sleep. I know it's difficult. You should have a good breakfast and you should be focused. Don't open a new book. Don't start something new. Just revise what you have learned over a period of time. Thank you very much. Stay blessed, stay safe, and